if you would like to do your thing now,
Good,
we,
yeah. All right.
get you in and get you out, so to
Certainly.
speak. Not
Yeah.
that we would love, you could stay for the whole meeting.
I only have about 3 hours worth of stuff, so.
That's fine, that'll keep our attention.
All right, well, thank you, Nick. My name is Brendan Pilkington. I'm the sergeant of the motorcycle section of the Suffolk County Highway Patrol Bureau. I have with me Officers Dan Gilroy, Scott Dugan. I had reached out to Chris regarding doing a motorcycle presentation from our behalf, just to cover some statistics and a couple safety issues. So I was actually glad to hear you say that the crowd levels have been down before we arrived. I thought it was, the word was out. And everybody stayed home. But we did, 2 years ago, I think we came. I spoke to Jim Barr, as you mentioned. We had a packed house and good feedback. So with that, we reached out again. Obviously, last year we couldn't come with COVID. But so to cover one thing, and it's certainly, before I talk about some of the statistics, and I know it's really deeply rooted with Abate, but in regards to our enforcement. So as most, and I'm sure with Abate, as most people know, we have a grant that's issued by New York State for motorcycle safety and enforcement. And a number of years ago, not so distant future, we used to do checkpoints and whatnot. We don't do those anymore. So that's out. We no longer do the checkpoints. And our enforcement has morphed over the past couple of years. Not just, 'cause we ride off duty as well. So our enforcement has morphed not so much where, I hate to use the word profiling, but the state used to want us to go after motorcyclists, with unsafe riding, the helmets, et cetera, the pipes. Now it's to keep the riders safe. And that's what our enforcement is triggered on. So we use, and I'll show you I'll go over some of the stats, but we use the stats run by the county from the previous year to where we target our enforcement. We're looking for the drivers of motor vehicles that are the ones that are hitting us and getting us killed. Now, that's where we target our enforcement. Certainly, if we see a motorcycle rider performing unsafe acts or riding without a helmet, they're fair game. They're just putting themselves in that situation. But our sole focus is to keep the motorcycle riders and the community safe. That's our sole focus. So I'm going to go over just some of the statistics like I did the last time with the previous years. Some of them are maybe alarming. If there's a question about anything, certainly stop me. But again, this is specific for Suffolk County. And we have an officer in Highway Patrol Bureau that runs the data, the statistics regarding accidents, fatalities, injuries for the entire county. And he has, in past few years, broken it down to specifically, we run a report for motorcycles. So this category, like the last one, includes motorcycles, dirt bikes, and ATVs. So in 2020, and you'll hear me refer to SPI. SPI is a crash with serious physical injury. And it's usually protracted impairment, whether it be serious fractures, compound fractures, major trauma, things like that. So if you hear me refer to SPI, it's a bad injury. All right? It's not just some road rash or a simple broken bone. But we had 14 SPI and 10 fatal motorcycle crashes in 2020. So 24 combined. And that accounts for approximately 15% of all motor vehicle crashes for the county in 2020. So the fatal crashes accounted for 41%. As you guys may know, Suffolk County leads the state and pretty much the Northeast in motorcycle fatalities and crashes. So it's something that certainly affects us all. 2 of the motorcycle crashes involved motorcycle or an ATV that had a passenger. 1 passenger sustained some serious injuries, and a passenger riding on an ATV without a helmet was killed, as was the operator. So as far as these crashes, both the SPI, the serious physical injury, and the fatalities, we haven't seen any specific spike that has been alarming. It pretty much ebbs and flows and stays in the general area for the past few years. Last year we did drop. So in 2019 we had 21 SPI crashes and 13 fatalities, whereas last year we went to 14 and 10 respectively. I think that could be attributed to the lack of traffic that's on the road due to COVID. So it was actually a good time one of the few good times to actually ride a motorcycle around Long Island, because there wasn't any lunatics riding around and driving around getting in our way. So I think that may be an anomaly. Certainly, it would be nice if the trend continues and we can keep that in a downward trend. As far as locations, the 6th precinct, which covers northwest Brookhaven, the town of Brookhaven, and the 1st precinct, which is the town of Babylon, they experienced the highest number of these crashes. Now, keep in mind, there were a lot more crashes than these numbers I'm talking about. These ones are specific to the fatalities and the serious physical injury. There was only one precinct that had 0 crashes regarding serious physical injury or fatalities, and that was the 2nd precinct, which is the town of Huntington. So I guess it's safe to say, if you want to stay alive, go up to Huntington. But the 6th by far. So what happens is now, we'll take this data and we use that. So when we go do our enforcement efforts, this year we had a real concentrated effort in the 6th precinct, because that was the problem last year. By far the highest number. So we had more of an effort in the 6th and the 1st with our efforts in the other locations, because we want to do it, we want to target to where these problems are occurring. And that being said, we hardly paid much attention, very few visits up in Huntington, because it didn't appear to be a problem. So with crashes, I'm sure most people would be able to assume this. The high months were July, August, and then September. So it peaked in July with 5 combined, and then it's August stayed 5, and then just gradually went down. December and January, there were nothing in 2020, and so we know why that is. Everybody's staying in. We're out, but most people are staying in. 38% of the crashes occurred on the weekend. If you include Friday, it's 50%. So 50% of these crashes, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The other, and no one day of the week had nothing. Monday was the one, the others had it. Thursday was another higher one, and I would attribute to that to the bike nights. That's when you have more bike nights during the week, but typically on a Wednesday or Thursday. So the more bikes that are out, the more chances you have of getting hit. Time of day, with very few exceptions, between 2 p.m. and 9 p.m., the vast majority, with 4 specifically in the 5 o'clock hour. What's 5 o'clock? Quitting time, right? But also keep in mind, these are also happening on the weekend. So we really, if we broke it down, I'm sure we can get it, but this doesn't say, I don't have really specific day of the week and time, but we can tell you the days and these times. So we're talking evening time is definitely problematic. There were only a few that occurred, 2, during the overnight hours. What may surprise you is the majority of these crashes occurred during daylight hours, as I just mentioned. And then 20 of these crashes were on a clear, dry day. So the sun was shining, roads were dry, and we had 20 of these crashes involving fatalities or serious physical injury. The other 4 crashes, you would think there was rain on the ground, water on the ground. It was just cloudy. So it was a cloudy, dry day, which means none of these fatalities, none of these accidents with serious injury were a result of the weather or the road conditions. Rider characteristics, as far as gender and age. Ladies, you'll be happy to know that you're pretty safe, because all of these riders were male. Yes. I'm sorry, yeah.
Sorry, were any of these accidents that you have a record of that alcohol related at all?
I'll get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep. Don't jump ahead, guy.
Can I drink now? It's 5 o'clock?
He wants to know if he can get a drink.
Yeah. So every rider involved in these accidents were all male. There were no female riders with these. 60% of these riders were between the ages of 21 and 40. 2 crashes involved riders who were less than 16 years old. All right. And those crashes involved, as you can guess, either an ATV or a dirt bike. Licensing. 65% involved did not have a valid license. Right? So we could attribute a lot of this to experience, we would think. But we run into, I'm sure these officers would vouch, we run into constantly riders that have been riding for many, many years and still don't have a valid license. So certainly this organization is one that has a powerful voice. We would encourage you, should you have some members that still have that permit from 1960, go out and get the license, all right? Because then at least they're going through the road test or they're taking the course that they've had some sort of training, all right? And as we know, the training is what's going to help them keep these folks alive. So 65% did not have a valid or properly classed license. And that was, and I didn't even finish this, 65% for the serious physical injury crashes, 88% did not have a license for the fatalities. Helmet use, 88% of the riders involved in these crashes were wearing a helmet. Okay, when we say a helmet, we mean it's a DOT-approved helmet. We wouldn't count, if they weren't wearing a DOT-approved helmet, we wouldn't count that as a helmet. So a personal story about helmets, and I know helmets are a touchy subject. You want to just show the difference? So we wear Sear helmets. Some people ask what brand we wear. We wear Sear. The officer is going to show the difference between the DOT and what we call the brain buckets.
Yeah.
Basically, black Tupperware on their head. So, and here's the thing is, there's many states that don't have a helmet law. And that may work in those states. And one could argue it might even work upstate New York. But whether law requires the DOT helmet or not, I certainly think it's a valid argument. People are taking their lives in their hands, riding without a proper, well, not having a proper helmet in this area, in Long Island, with this traffic, the road conditions. So a personal story that I want to mention, if you'd indulge. My brother, he's 20 years older than me, and he's been riding along much longer than I have. But he loves the brain bucket. He was not a fan of the DOT helmet. He always says it's heavy, which is what we hear oftentimes. Oh, they're heavy, they're uncomfortable, it's too big, or whatever the excuses. I want the, now he's losing his hair. I like the freedom of my, so he doesn't like wearing it. And I've always pleaded with him, wear the DOT helmet, because you never know. As long as he's been riding, he's a good rider. As long as he's been riding, it doesn't matter. It's what the other people are doing. Case in point, to last weekend, he's on a ride, and he's retired. He rides all over the country. And he's on a ride on the Blue Ridge Parkway up in the mountains of Virginia. There's nobody around. And the rear end of his motorcycle went out from under him in a curve. And he was not speeding. He has no idea why. It could have been oil, wet leaves. We don't really, he still to this point doesn't know. 3 broken ribs, 2 fractured ribs, a punctured and collapsed lung, road rash throughout his whole body, and a terribly shattered ankle that required 7 pins and 2 plates. He's only alive, more than likely, because of his helmet. And he was wearing the DOT helmet. And he got one of the carbon fiber, which I said, why don't you at least get the carbon fiber? You know, they're a little smaller. Anybody who's seen them is familiar with it. I said, at least wear that. And he wore that, and that carbon fiber helmet took a big gouge. And weirdly enough, if you scroll in, anybody who's religious, whether you're religious or not, it's just eerie. If you zoomed in on the photo of this gouge out of his helmet, there was a bearded, you could make out a bearded man in the gouge. I swear, if anybody doesn't believe me after we're done talking, I'll show you the photo and you can see it for yourself. Right. That being said, and this is the last thing I'll say about the helmet. He wouldn't be alive today if he was wearing the brain bucket he normally used to wear. And when I said, hey, thank God you're wearing that, he goes, about a year ago, he stopped wearing the other thing. I guess he was done listening to me. So please wear a proper helmet, and I would ask this organization, especially when it comes to that letter A, awareness, that saves lives. It really does. It really does. So I don't want to beat that to death. So in fatal crashes, 11 riders were wearing a helmet. 1 rider in a fatal crash was not. And there were 2 motorcycle crashes that involved a passenger. serious physical injury of the passenger, they were wearing a helmet, and the fatality, they were not wearing a helmet. All right, 12 crashes involved left turns. We know that's a problem. I will tell you that we were just talking about this out in the parking lot. So when we go out and do the enforcement, most of us will be on our motorcycle when we're doing it. I find that if I'm on the motorcycle and people are committing certain violations, if they're going to do it in front of me on a police motorcycle, they're certainly going to do it in front of you. I've had people on their cell phone and texting look right at me and then continue doing it as if I wasn't there. And I firmly believe they just didn't see that, let alone the motorcycle, that there was a police officer on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
So the distraction is really, really dangerous. It's out there. So when we're out there, this is the type of stuff we're looking at. And I can tell you, in the past couple weeks, we picked up our enforcement July and August. The past couple weeks, I think I wrote upwards to 14 left turn violations in front of me. You know, one that says Suffolk Police on the front of the fairing. So, if, like I said, if they're doing it with us, they're doing it with everybody. One thing that we can control, and this is the training part of it, is our speed. We have to be cautious of the speed, especially as we're approaching intersections, parking lot exits, etc. But we need to be focused on the other drivers. Just because you think you made eye contact doesn't mean anything. All right, you should be paying attention. Yeah, try to make eye contact, but they could be looking right through you. Doesn't mean they see you. So take a look at the car, take a look at the tire, see if you see the motion of the tire. And you need to be ready. Maybe cover the brake. Yes, sir.
Okay. The way I ride, if I'm approaching a situation where there's going to possibly be a left turn, you've got to get out where they can see you. So you want to roll to the left lane of the lane. Because if you're behind a truck or a car, they're already in automatic drive. As soon as that truck passes them, they're already on the gas.
Oh, yeah.
The same thing if you're near a parking lot. You're moving over to the right, and I don't see this happening. You know, where you're putting yourself in a position to be seen.
Right. Well, and you bring up a good point, too. If you're following somebody through an intersection, we are finding a lot of riders will tailgate. And that becomes a problem. So we're certainly targeting the motor vehicles that target the rider. That's a problem in and of itself. But riders are putting themselves in a bad position when they themselves are tailgating. Because now, just like you point out, that larger profile vehicle comes through an intersection. They don't see the motorcyclist. They assume it's clear because you're 5 or 10 feet behind the bumper. So we have to be cautious how we're riding. So some things are within our control to make ourselves safer, and we really have to be careful out there.
Psychologically, we're not dangerous. You know, they see an 18-wheeler coming down the road, they see a car coming down the road, they have to worry about us.
Right.
They don't have to worry about us.
I'm bigger than
So
that.
psychologically, they don't see us. And there's been numerous times that we've asked people, and they're like, nope, we didn't see you. We've had people go by us in a group of 6 on the expressway and be like, we didn't see you.
Happens routinely. Happens routinely. It is scary. So traffic control devices, 15 of these crashes involved no traffic control device. 6 involved the traffic signal and 3 involved the stop sign. 20 of these crashes were a motorcycle involved in a crash with another motor vehicle. 2 crashes were a motorcycle running off the road into a guide rail, and 2 crashes involved the motorcycle crashing into another motorcycle. One thing that we did like to see, we did like seeing in this, is that none of these crashes listed alcohol as a contributing factor for the motorcyclist. 3 of them listed alcohol involvement for the other motor vehicle driver. 2 of those were the serious injury, and 1 was the fatality of the rider. A few years ago, and I think I mentioned this 2 years ago, I was here last time, I was working at a DWI checkpoint up in Huntington, and a older gentleman on a Harley-Davidson came to the checkpoint, ride, no problem, got off the motorcycle. His eyes were a little squirrely with the first officer detecting. He got off the motorcycle, they tested his eyes. I didn't see how that test went. I did watch his one leg stand, his walk and turn. He did those perfect, no problem at all. But his eyes, they don't lie. So he ended up consenting to take a breathalyzer test, 0.35 on his motorcycle. So functioning alcoholic who had to go to the hospital. He reached the threshold, we had to take him to the hospital. But crazy that he's on a motorcycle. In Huntington, the safest place to be on a motorcycle. Exactly. Well, he went there sober, he didn't leave sober. So contributing factors, the following chart indicates the contributing factors to the motorcyclist. So we asked about the alcohol, so none were regarding the rider, which was good. So this is for the motorcyclist itself. The number one, does anybody want to take a guess? Number one cause? Speed, all right? And this was asked, we've done a couple of these presentations, and if some of you were at some of the other club groups that we were at, obviously you're hearing this again. We don't have the breakdown to a cruiser or a touring motorcycle versus a rice rocket. We don't have that. We will say from experience, we see riders on a Yamaha Cruiser or Harley Davidson speeding just as often as we do the rice rockets. But they seem to be putting themselves in much more danger because they're doing top speeds, they're splitting traffic on the expressway, and they're taking their life into their own hands. So certainly they could be among the statistic, I just don't have that breakdown. The second most contributing factor for the motorcyclist is no contributing factor, so that's good. Improper passing was one. Whether it's on the left or on the right, it was an improper pass, and just think about that. Think about road objects. People pass on the shoulder. Motorcyclists pass on the shoulder. Anybody who's ridden on our highways know the shoulders are littered with tons of garbage and debris, chunks of concrete. The pavement that actually belonged in the giant crater that we went over a mile ago is all piled up on the shoulder. So they're going to hit that. All right, you're moving over, they're going to hit that. So there was two improper passing. Disregarding traffic control device, the rider inexperience, inattention, reaction to another vehicle, and other, which we don't know. Now the following indicates contributing factors to the motorist, not the rider. Seven of these, they had no contributing factor, indicating the investigating officer felt the crash was caused by the motorcyclist, but failed to yield the right-of-way was noted in 9 crashes, all right? Wow. And that failed to yield, that's that left turn, all right? In that category. I mean, it's a different citation when we write it. There are a couple different ways to do that, but if someone makes a left in front of us, they're not yielding. Yeah.
But I don't think they're writing that ticket much. If they
So
don't see
here's what happens. We are.
Okay.
But if you're talking about after an accident,
After the accident, yeah.
so the way the law reads is for a violation, we need to observe it.
Okay.
We need to observe the violation to issue the summons.
But if there's reasonable cause to believe, based on the evidence,
It's a violation. So a violation, that's
I get it, okay.
You don't see it, it never happens.
New York State CPL, it has to occur in our presence. The difference being is, let's just say that somebody is unlicensed, and obviously we could validate that, we can write unlicensed. So if their vehicle wasn't inspected, we can write that because
Right,
it's
the
obvious.
witness.
You know, so we have some things.
You don't see
A few years back, several years back, one of the police commissioners put out a directive stating that an investigating officer can write a summons based on their investigation at the scene.
Right.
They were getting thrown out in court because we didn't observe it, and any judge would say,
What about a camera?
This didn't-
If a camera picked it up, can you charge them after the fact?
well, we probably wouldn't if it was either criminal in nature or fatality. That's something the district attorney's office would probably consider. Yeah. So failed to yield the right of way, 9 crashes. 7 of these in serious physical injury, twice in fatalities. What else here? I think I'm wrapping up here. Criminality. 5 crashes involved criminality where a summary arrest occurred. When we say summary arrest, it means click, click, and they go off to the precinct. 1 vehicle operator was arrested for DWI following a serious injury crash. Another vehicle operator was arrested for DWI following a fatal crash. And additionally, an operator was arrested for felony DWI and leaving the scene of a serious physical injury crash. A vehicle operator, not a motorcyclist, was arrested for leaving the scene of a serious physical injury crash. And there was 1 summary arrest and 2 tickets issued to motorcycle operators for aggravated unlicensed operation, which is either suspended or revoked license. So, so as mentioned in the beginning, we have the officer who plugs this data in, and as I mentioned, we use this to concentrate our efforts on the enforcement. I can't stress enough now that we really want to keep the riders safe. That's where we're concentrating our enforcement on. And I asked him, I said, do me a favor, just so I can pinpoint where to go, what roads, and include all the crashes. I don't want just the fatalities. I want anything, even where it's minor injuries. I just want to find out where these motorcyclists are getting hurt the most. He said, you sure you want that? I said, yeah. So he printed out the county, and those black dots are everywhere there's been a motorcycle crash. So I said, I guess we can go anywhere. So it is. It's littered all over the place.
Is there a heavy concentration?
There are some heavy concentrations, and it's roads like Montauk Highway in the Mastic area, 347 up in the Port Jeff Station area, Long Island Expressway, Sunrise Highway. The southern part of the town of Babylon has some. There are some in Huntington. None of those were fatalities or serious physical injury, but they're all over the place. Middle Country Road in the Selden Quorum area. Some of these are just stacked. They're just stacked upon each other. So it's not like if I was to look at the William Floyd up at the north end, not much. There's not much traffic. There's not much happening. Further south, when you get to Mastic Shirley area, it's much more concentrated, a lot more vehicles, and that becomes the problem.
Retail.
There's a lot of things. You have parking lots. Yes, a great thing to point out is we're dealing, I don't want to say we're certainly a suburbia, but we have to ride. Urban riding is much different than if we're riding in the country. And we really have to be smart the way we ride. And, I'm just hoping that some of these stats, while some may be alarming, I just want them to sit in the back of your mind as you keep, as you're out there on the road, and just to try to, how do I keep safe? How do I make myself a better rider? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, out of all your statistics, how many were in Suffolk, registered, licensed, bikes, motorcycles?
Well, I'll go back to, because I mentioned the unlicensed, I just have to just reread it. I don't have the totality, because the only report I have were the serious injuries and the fatalities.
Licensed motorcycle riders
Yep.
are in Suffolk.
Oh, how many are there?
Yes.
Oh.
That I don't have.
Well, that, we need to know to compare.
That'd be almost impossible. It would be almost impossible to find out how many there are, because many of them aren't involved in any crash that's reported. So,
Correct, that's what we want to know.
yeah.
How many bikers are there? Licensed, registered?
He wants to know how many motorcycles.
Oh, how many motor? Oh, so we're I can get you the number. I could probably email it to Chris. But we lead New York State in the number of registered motorcycles. Yeah, Suffolk. Suffolk County leads New York State in the number of registered motorcycles. What that number is, I don't know off the top of my head.
That would be interesting. The fact is that over 100 million bikers in Suffolk, and only 15% of them got accidents, and they were unlicensed, 65% that were unlicensed. I mean, that goes a dent into all these statistics.
Yeah, but again,
That's part of it.
certainly, and inexperience plays a big part of it. But Suffolk, we are much more of an urban area than if you would go way upstate to the Finger Lakes region or the Adirondacks. So we're dealing with a difference. But
We pay enough in taxes for that.
But even in comparison to Nassau County, Queens County, New York County, Kings, we are number one. We're number one.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, according to the DMV, there are more than 50,000 motorcycles registered in Nassau and Suffolk.
Yep, 50,000.
More than 50,000
You-
in Nassau and Suffolk.
Yeah, it's a lot of motorcycles. Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing also, how many, well, whether they're licensed, some, we know they're registered, but we know there are a lot of riders that have 8, 9, 10, 15 motorcycles. Billy Joel, he lives on Long Island, he's got, I think, 50. probably has half of that number.
Billy back there has them.
So it's still one rider, you know, it's one rider with multiple motorcycles, you know, so that's something to consider also.
Can-
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a question. I've come across this debate frequently lately to the packs of dirt bikes and ATVs that are young, they're unlicensed, and get packed, you know. And they do impact my safety because they almost took me out once, and I've encountered them 4 times just in the season in nasty Surrey area.
Yep.
How are these being dealt with?
So it's actually a tricky issue for us. I don't want to say touchy. It's a tricky issue for us because if you were to go online, it's public view, our pursuit policy, when they're out there on the road, they're committing traffic violations. And when they take off, like they do, like a bat out of hell, we can't pursue them for a traffic violation. So the problem is we don't want to end up them or causing another person as one of these statistics for the following year. What a lot of the precincts have done, it really doesn't pertain to us because they're mostly on the side streets and we're not running into them where we're out and about. But they're trying to get them when they're stopped. So they have to fuel up and they congregate in other locations. The 7th precinct in the Mastic-Shirley area has been really, really good this past summer. If anybody follows them on their social media, they've been really, really good and really aggressive in trying to put a hamper on the reckless ATV and dirt bike operation. And a lot of that is getting them just where they're not expecting us to get them. You know, and that's where we get some of the rice rockets. We'll get them at a fuel station. We can't, you know, maybe it's just a ticket for hiding their license plate because most of them, when they tuck up their license plate, they're doing it for a reason. They're doing it because they're the ones running from us. So, you know, and maybe that's the only tool we have at the time. So there's only so much we can do, but we're certainly not turning a blind eye to it. But it is very tricky because if we were to initiate a pursuit and they take off and crash, we should have never started that pursuit because it was a traffic violation. So it's tough to manage. We're hoping, and I think through education, whether it be driver's ed courses and things like that, that maybe they'll realize, but oftentimes they don't care. They just don't care. And, so it's tough, you know, we've experienced it, even when, you know, I'm out and about, my civilian car, I've experienced the same thing. So, you know, a few years back we were successful in getting, I don't know if anybody remembers about, might have been about 10 years ago now, I think it was on the FDR, they had that big thing in New York City, and then we had it out here. So we had it, and I was working that day, we had 7 of the rice rockets, and we were able to stop them, and it was a very coordinated effort that we were able to get them all stopped on the Long Island Expressway. And we impounded 7 motorcyclists and arrested 7 riders for you know, they were basically doing on the Long Island Expressway what everybody saw on video along the FDR. So we did do that. But it's tough. And you need a lot of bodies. You need a lot of bodies to do it. We don't have a lot of bodies. So there was a hand that went up. Yes, sir.
A lot of us do a lot of group riding, and many times we're riding, let's say, anywhere from 7 to 15, 20 motorcycles, you know, staggered, you know, riding the right way. But you go through a traffic light, and maybe the tail end has got a red light, and the
Stop.
guy's got a green. You know, you do that, okay.
Yes.
No, I mean, it's crazy, something that they got pulled or wait, et cetera.
Just like a funeral procession. Same thing.
I'm not gonna be wise guy.
Yeah, no, we see that, and a lot of people in a funeral will have an incorrect assumption that, hey, I'm following along, my flashes are on, they give me that orange placard, the funeral's got the purple lights flashing, I'm good. But at the end of the day, it sounds morbid, but the person up front's not alive anymore, and they got all the time in the world to get to their final spot.
Yeah.
So why create another emergency or put somebody at risk to have to bury a second person a few days later? We got to take our time. So it's the same thing with the group ride. So we're out there enjoying ourselves, or we're going out on a nice Saturday, whether we want to go to the park, have a barbecue, whatever, or just going to ride out east, turn around and coming back. We want to get from point A to point B safely, and that means obeying stop signs, yield signs, and the red lights.
No, I get it.
And that may mean that you have to, but it depends on your route. You know, if you plan the route where you're on an open road, they can catch up. You know, and that's what we want, people to do it safely.
Okay, thank you.
When you were talking about the statistics on the riders and everything, do you have you noticed more this year? Because everybody in this room have noticed more this year, almost one a day, if not more.
Crashes?
Yeah.
So-
Bikers down.
Yeah,
Have you guys been watching this to see?
We hear it on the radio. We don't run the statistics because we operate on one channel, so we're on our command band for the highway. But I think you guys would agree, we are hearing it. Whether it comes to this and it ends up being a serious physical injury or fatality. But yeah, I think it's gonna be safe to say we'll see a marked increase. And that goes to why I think we had the decrease last year.
Well, the only reason
Because
I'm
of COVID
asking
and the lack of
is
cars.
to us, because we are now with social media. You know, we're hearing more about it, so I'm looking to see if you are hearing it and knowing about it, that it's happening more, or is it just that social media now is making us more aware of
Yeah,
it?
well, certainly, social media has a profound negative and positive effect on a lot of things. And I think, yes, it's almost, I'll equate that to a local community Facebook page that people will go on there and say, this town has gone down the pits from when I lived here 10 years ago. You know, these people breaking in my car and doing this and doing that. Hate to break the news, that stuff's been happening for a long time. Just no one was going on Facebook and taking a picture of their car and showing their ring camera and doing things like that. So a lot of that stuff has been happening, so I would say social media seems to magnify it. I don't know if it has certainly an effect this year. We'll have to see at the end of the year if these percentages will go up. But yeah, we hear it. When we hear motorcycle, at least my ears perk, because I want to know what road was it. I try to pay attention to the time of day. And I don't want to see them on this document next year. You know, anytime a bike goes down, you're hoping it's minor. You know, maybe some road rash or something like that. Hopefully it's minor, but we know, just like we don't want cops getting hurt or killed. You know, we'd love to have zero. Fortunately, that doesn't happen, and for the same reason, we don't want people to end up being a statistic and on this, which is why we're doing the enforcement we are with speeders and cell phones. Speeders and cell phones are the number one that we're out there getting with the vehicles. By far, so many people speeding, crazy speeds and high speeds, and the cell phones are really problematic, really problematic. We had somebody today. We finished up a funeral escort today, and we had just started heading east on Middle Country Road, and a car turned right out in front of us. And I said on the radio, did anybody hear me on the radio? I said, take a look at the bumper sticker. Yeah. I said,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, what is the, I wish we had it.
Yeah.
Well, it was one that looked almost like this. Yeah, you guys normally hit, that was it.
That was it, that's the one. Yeah.
This was the one. So,
I do what?
this bumper sticker was displayed on the back of the SUV that turned right out in front of us, 6 motorcycles, and this was right in the back.
What did
So,
he tell you about that?
so the thing is, it
Go ahead,
actually,
Dad, go ahead.
yeah, well, it came a point where she realized, I gave away the gender, I didn't mean to do that, but the driver realized that, oh, there's motorcycles behind it, and moved over and, hey. But the problem was, they never saw us. The driver never saw us coming up. And we weren't moving fast. I mean, we were a pack of 6 motorcycles. We weren't going fast. Had that been a single rider, moving at maybe a high rate of speed, who knows what could have happened. And this is somebody who obviously cares or has a family member that's a rider. So, you know, now you compound that to the people that don't give a crap about the motorcycle community. It becomes a problem. Raise your hand.
What's a valid dot sticker?
DOT.
Just has to say DOT.
Valid. So you can buy you can get a rain bucket and then go buy a DOT sticker and slap it on the back. It doesn't make it valid.
There's a lot of stuff that goes into a DOT sticker.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a certain height, and the most important thing is that it actually has to be laminated into the helmet. So if you get a helmet and the DOT sticker's actually on the outside, that's no good. It's got to be laminated into the helmet, so that way we know you can stick the DOT sticker.
Well, certainly everything can be bought online. We talk about social media, you can get pretty much everything online. So a lot of these helmets that we find, it's like Tupperware, and oftentimes inside the label, which DOT helmet will be labeled properly, it'll say, this is either a novelty item or a toy or costume not to be worn, when on the road or so. It gives like a little disclaimer, and that's for the maker, basically saying, hey, you wear this and get in a crash, not sue us, because you shouldn't be wearing this piece of plastic when you're around. So valid meaning, like he said, it's got to be laminated. It can't be just you type DOT on a sticker and put it on the back next to a smiley face. It doesn't work. Yeah.
I just want to touch on 2 or 3 things real quick. So one of his statistics was when he was talking about the riders contributing factors, and there was none. It's my opinion, but part of that is us not taking care of our motorcycles. How many people work all day? Yeah, I've been on a bike in 2 weeks. You're like, I get a chance to get on it. You just jump on the bike and you go. We've all done it, right?
Yeah.
That bike's sitting in the cold for a little while, then you get on a nice warm day, tire pressure's down a little bit. That could be a contributing factor to the bike not stopping properly and you having an accident. So you want to make sure that you're checking your tire pressures, that you're checking your brakes, making sure your controls are operating properly. Because when we don't do stuff like that and we have an accident, we cause it ourselves. So just make sure you're actually properly maintaining your motorcycles so that way you don't have those issues. And the other thing I was just going to touch on real quick is, I know you guys hate when we stop you, we're doing enforcement for the helmets and stuff, but quite honestly, if you have the right stuff on, we're not going to bother you. You guys are going to go out and ride and have the day that you want to have. But when we see somebody with a brain bucket on, or yesterday I had a guy full face helmet and it was back here on his head, like not pulled down, you're asking to be stopped. So if you guys are doing the right thing and everything is where it's supposed to be, you'll probably never see us again unless we come and talk to you. So just try and do the right thing while you're out there. I know the helmets suck, but it is what it is. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And it's the same thing with even eye protection. So eye protection is a big one where we'll see a rider without wearing any eye protection. What happens when you're riding and you get blasted with the sand, you have no eye? Right, even people that are wearing the sunglasses, you'll get it. Yeah. What happens? You're trying to blink, if you're like me, it'll get underneath your glasses, you're trying to blink, trying to wash it out. Now imagine not wearing any at all. Yeah. What you're getting hit with in the face, whether it's the bugs. How many people have taken their eye protection off at the end of the day and seen a couple bugs splatter on them? Well, where would that be? It would be right in your eye. So think about it. You're riding on Sunrise Highway, the Long Island Expressway, or worse yet, you're on Montauk Highway right in the Mastic area, and you have that bug in the eye or the rock in the eye, and now you can't see. So if you can't see and your vision gets blurry, that's the problem. And so when we do this enforcement, the whole goal is for you not to be a statistic here. We don't want anybody to end up getting hurt, getting injured, a statistic, because similar to my brother, if you weren't wearing a helmet, if he wasn't wearing a helmet, he would have been on here, right? He'd be on here as probably a fatality, or he'd be drinking out of a straw the rest of his life, or something like that. So that's really what it comes down to. But I can't emphasize enough that, we get the scowl when we stop a rider, but we're stopping far more motor vehicles than we are the motorcyclists in an effort to keep this community safe. And that's the goal. That's the goal, is to change habits and to make people safe. You want to add anything else? Scott? You got anything? Anybody? All right, some hands. Yes, sir.
It's all about visibility, we know that, you gotta be visible. There's a guy I see riding around by me every once in a while, he's got a strobe on the front of his bike, and you can see that thing coming from 500 feet away. Is that legal or not legal?
White?
So,
It's a white strobe, and it's not, people say, well, they cause it to turn in front of you because they think it flashes.
Is it in the headlight?
But this thing is like 2 quick ones and a long one, it's pretty obvious.
it's built into his headlight, or he added it on?
I don't really know. I've seen some of
So
that.
the vehicle traffic law, it honestly would depend on if it's dazzling. So there's a section of vehicle traffic law with equipment for dazzling lights. If it's distracting to.
You see on a bicycle, these guys on bicycles all have strobes, little flashing strobes.
Right.
So that specifically, what you described, would not be legal, but in New York State, a modulating headlight is legal. If So if you have, there are manufacturers that make the bike that way, or you could, you know, get an aftermarket thing to do it, but a modulating headlight in New York is legal for a motorcycle. What you're describing is not a modulating headlight.
It's gotta be the headlight itself, it can't be like a little accessory strobe or something like that.
Right, it's gotta be the headlight assembly. It can't be an add-on strobe or LED. That would then become a dazzling light.
What about if it's in your brake light?
So you're talking about the strobe and brake lights? As long as it only activates when you're stopping, then that's fine.
Right. Yeah. There was another hand somewhere. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm wondering how everybody's addressing the noise issue, because we're fighting for, against the bill that's sitting up in Albany, I'm sure you're aware of it. I live in Nichols Road, so for me, I don't, when I hear the motorcycles, it puts a smile on my face, when I hear a Harley go by, or Victory, what have you. But then it seems like a lot of the kids are playing games with their little four-cylinder Hondas and what have you.
With their
And
bang.
they're doing this all night, and then you get on a little community thing, and it's like, oh my God, I heard gunshots, and this and that, of course you get the pints and this and that.
Right.
What's going on with Suffolk County PD enforcing not the motorcycles, not here and now, but the cars? Is there anything going on? Trying to,
So you want us to? Do you want us to profile those cars with the modified exhaust? I'm just trying to see the question. You're saying the motorcycles are fine, go after those cars with the, because they don't make you smile. So the reality is though, like, some people don't smile when the loud pipes on a motorcycle go by. Just as much as you're annoyed to see that Honda Civic with the souped up exhaust, with the popping, yeah, it's a modified exhaust. It's a modified exhaust. And just that annoys you, your motorcycle, if it has a modified exhaust, may annoy somebody else.
no, I understand that. But
So,
any effort going on?
well, I will say, a few years ago, we would have had a much more concentrated effort on looking for modified exhaust on the motorcycles. But because we are more concerned with the safety issues of motorcyclists now, we're looking for these moving violations and whatnot. I don't want to say we discount the equipment issue, because it is important in some instances. But if they catch our attention, yeah, we may do it, because in some, I'll look at it from a personal point of view. I could stop that guy for the one issue of having a modified exhaust, and then by doing that, somebody else just went down the road at 80 miles an hour that I let go. So, sometimes you have to pick and choose your battles, and sometimes those people with the modified exhaust are giving us plenty of reasons to stop them, and the modified exhaust is just one summons among the many that they're issued.
Now, the thing with the modified exhaust, I hear that phrase. Now, if somebody modifies their exhaust from a Harley Davidson to a Vance and Hines, but it says street legal, it's not for off-road.
It's not
Is that a
legal.
problem?
Yes,
That's a
not
problem.
legal.
Because
Just
one
the
is
manual. Once you change the exhaust from stock, it's not legal.
So any Vance and Hines, then, you know what? Because I'm asking, because we were inquiring about this, and I was working on it, and I spoke to state troopers when we were down at Jacob Rapids, and they were like, no, we wouldn't do that. So I didn't know if it's something that is definitely modified, or he said, well, if it's a street, Vance and Hines, that's fine, but if it's off-road, and he said, yeah, because that should be on the street, kind of making it like a DOT, non-DOT issue. But now the way the law reads, it's modified, so you take a Vance and Hines on anybody, not just a Harley, or just on Harley.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's just say you
It's
have
because I think we all need to know that.
Do they impound the bike or just give you the ticket?
No. You may get a summons for it, but that's at the officer's discretion. Yes, sir.
On that same subject, I got an '86 Honda, and the exhaust rotted away. I go to get a replacement exhaust, nobody makes it. You can get an aftermarket, but you're not getting it from Honda. Do I have it scrapped away?
No.
Yeah, because it would be an aftermarket exhaust.
So if you read the law is like you said, anytime you modify it from stock, it's a modified exhaust. With that being said, you got to use your judgment. If you replace it with an exhaust that's comparable, when you look at all the details and everything in the exhaust, and it's almost exactly the same stock, that's gonna be fine. It's not gonna create a loud noise, it's not gonna change, you know, the performance of the bike. The biggest modifications that they're talking about is, a lot of the exhaust that people put on afterwards is to increase performance, or a lot of people put on just to increase the sound, you know, and once you get to a certain level of sound, you start drawing attention. But if you, letter of the law is any modification is, any change is a modification, but in your circumstance, you know, if you got a ticket for it, went to court and said, look, I bought this at aftermarket, there's no replacement, here's the specs for the original, here's the specs for this, I don't think you're gonna have any type of problem.
Technically, legally, it is.
Legally, according to the law, anytime you change it from stock, it's modified.
So, well, and again, to point out, you know, a few years back, if you came upon a motorcycle checkpoint, that may be one of the things that might be checked out. We're not doing those anymore. I will say one thing, though, about the phrase "loud pipe saves lives," right? So let's think about that. Where's the noise coming from on the motorcycle? Behind you. Where are the dangers? In front of you. So at the end of the day, it's loud pipes sound cool, and that's what I'm putting on the motorcycle. So, but it's a nice slogan. It's a nice slogan. Yes?
Few years back, when we were running the motorcycle checkpoints, I got pulled over, I was on my way to Claudius. Now, I ride an old truck, always stop, quiet, and listen to my radio. I get pulled into this area, and the guy's checking my tire, you know, he's doing his thing, doing his job, but as he's doing his job, the Chevy with cherry bombs on it. Right there. I said to him, as he's checking me out, I go, what about this car right here? Oh, we're not here for them, we're here for you guys. That was wrong.
Just saying.
I wasn't there, so I can't speak on behalf.
No, but just that's.
You brought it back, you triggered a memory that was wrong.
Yeah.
And he let me go.
So what are you complaining about? What are you complaining about then? Oh my gosh, we got it. Oh, goodness.
Like you said, since that time, they've tried to change the way that we do enforcement. Back then, we were targeting just motorcycles for motorcycle safety. But that was the way the grant was given to us. We were to go out and, well, so they're trying to change it now, like he said, for the safety of motorcycles. So, like, when we're out there, we're gonna be writing tickets to cars and everything to improve your safety. But like I said before, if I see you with the brain bucket on, or I see your hands all the way up here, you know, or you go by and my eardrums get blown out, then we're probably gonna stop you.
That's the goal.
Right. That's the whole
That's
point.
the goal. Yeah, I mentioned that a few times. Our goal with enforcement, and that's any enforcement, is to change bad habits, to change habits. And, you know, specifically a problem with riders is that we just really need to emphasize to people driving motor vehicles to pay attention to people on the two wheels, you know, on the motorcycles, sometimes three wheels. Yes, ma'am?
What about, bikes that have like the multicolor LEDs, like under the tank or on the wheels?
So again, all illegal. Section 375.41 of the Vehicle Traffic Law says there shall be no colored lights on any motor vehicle, which includes motorcycles. That includes what we see now, like almost every other Jeep Wrangler has red and blue and purple and everything else. Those are all illegal. So in New York State, and oftentimes it's blue. Blue is reserved for volunteer firefighters. There's specific regulation for that. They have, you know, even the light, which is a very antiquated law, has to be a light a certain way and has to be front facing. Same thing with red, only be in the rear unless it's for emergency vehicles. Purple, I don't know where that belongs. So green, volunteer ambulance. So there's a number of reasons why we don't want that. The short answer is yes, it's illegal. You could be ticketed for it, but it would depend on if it's how distracting or dazzling or something else. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's illegal, but illegal if you're moving with them on.
Right.
If you go to a bike show and you have a custom bike and it's all green and you have green lights, illuminating the motor and everything, that's fine, as long as the bike is sitting still displayed. Once that bike starts moving, if those lights are on.
Fine in a parking
legal.
lot, not on a public road.
Right.
And that same thing with the cars. So a lot of those are on a switch. You know, if they're on a switch and they can switch them off, you know, just keep them for the car shows and things like that. I'm not gonna argue, I think it looks really nice. It does look cool. But certainly like the volunteer firefighting community, they take issue with a lot of the vehicles on the road with blue lights. Because when they respond to a call, their blue lights now become normal. No one's even thinking about it. So, and same thing with the green lights. The volunteer ambulance folks have the same issue. So,
Do police carry decibel readers, or it doesn't matter because it's not stopped?
we don't.
The DEC police do.
DEC and code enforcement will also carry, but normally they're not writing any vehicle and traffic law violations on the public road. We do not. Carry tint meters. Check the tint on the windows. See, it's not just the bikes.
Hey, modified exhaust is modified exhaust, whether it be a car, motorcycle, whatever.
Going to one bike night, just kind of funny, BMW.
Oh, B&W motorcycle. Yes.
Going back to the social media, how people like to post their escapades, their movies and their burnouts and all this crazy stuff. I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it back in the day, with cars and stuff used to do it on the down low pretty much. But lately, there has been a lot of groups and gatherings with people specifically doing it in open areas and public areas and causing harm to each other or other people. What does the police department do with something like that when somebody can be identified in that video that's on social media after the incident occurred?
Yeah, I don't know if the precincts are specifically, they may or may not. So I can't answer that because we don't really get involved in those type of investigations. I would say certainly, if you say like there's injuries, if somebody's seriously injured as a result, I'm sure the investigating officers and detectives are going to scour social media for identification purposes. But it's not something that my unit necessarily gets involved in. Some of these social media gatherings that, you know, the police department is made known of in advance because they do post it, that this is what we're doing, forgetting that we can see it. So the goal then now of the police department is to try to intervene before anything bad happens, to maybe break up the party, so to speak. And that happens with even some of the drag racing that we're seeing along the service roads and along Deer Park, or, you know, 231 and things like that. So when we get intelligence, yeah, we try to intervene to try to prevent it from happening in the beginning. I can't answer because I just don't know specifically because we don't get involved in that in my section, what they're doing, you know, with that, or even if that's being presented to them. So, sorry. Yes, sir? Oh, thank you.
Karen, one of our members started this, I don't know if you've seen it.
It's a pretty good book.
It's for giving it to kids to bring up their awareness.
Jim gave me this a couple of years ago. I thought it was a fantastic idea.
So maybe you guys, you don't need to use our name, just print it.
Name's right at the top. Just keep printing them and give us to us. I actually told him I actually think this is a great idea, and that goes back to what we talked about before. Is, you know, maybe changing habits. But in this case, because I remember speaking about it, and this is almost like the license plate game, right?
Exactly.
The motorcycles. So, and it's kind of funny. Because even to this day, when we're on road trips with my family, I'll just shout out, you know, randomly, Hawaii! No one else getting Hawaii, I'm happy to get Hawaii, because I'm staring at plates. And I got it. I'm the winner. So, so here I am, 44 years old, and I'm still staring at license plates trying to win a game that I was taught as a kid. So I think this has a profound, whoever came up with this idea, fantastic. I think it's actually a really good idea.
Take it and use some of your budget,
Well,
and print them up. Suffolk County Police, we're good with that, because it might save a life.
yeah, so, well, certainly, as these are
No
published from
copyright.
you, feel free to get them to us. as well. You know, so if you publish them, feel free to give them to us, because we will have no problem handing these out when we do stops. Because even like, I think we hand out some of the cards. Those cards, you know, they're available if you go to the precinct or headquarters, but we also try to hand them out when we're out and about, because we just want people paying attention.
Well, we don't have a problem if you want to duplicate those.
All right, good to know.
We don't have a copyright on it.
All right, let me just get that in writing from your lawyer, please. Any other questions? Thank you for this, by the way. No, so I don't know if
Okay.
we took too much of your time, but
No, not at all.
I appreciate the time, and,
No,
you know,
thank you.
hopefully it gave some insight. We are the good guys.
Yes, well, that came across very, very well to, I think, a lot of us here. That not only are you public servants and you represent law enforcement and you do your jobs very well, you're human beings, and you came across
Your
like a
riders.
very good human being and friend of all motorcyclists. And I'd like to commend you and the other officers that were here tonight. So,
Nick, I appreciate the kind words, but at the end of the day, you know, we sort of take it personal because we ride. You know, we ride on duty, we ride off duty. We do a lot more riding on duty. And sometimes we're just, it's like asking a pro golfer to go to Top Golf on the weekend. We're tired, you know. We are tired, but we ride, so we do get it. We're not far removed, we're not ignorant to the motorcycle community. We do get it.
Let me ask you something. You guys have kids?
Yes,
You ride with your kids?
yes.
Have you always ridden with your kids? You know that there's trying to pass a law that no one under the age of 12 is allowed on the back of the bike?
Well, you,
Yeah.
I could talk about all sorts of anti-law
right
enforcement
there.
laws. There's all sorts of crazy laws.
Yeah, but they're trying to pass it that no child under 12 is allowed on a bike, including dirt bikes. So you all ride, you all have kids, and you all have kids that you take on rides with you. You know, this is also something that you guys should be aware of.
Yeah, and listen, there's no hiding the fact that this organization's done a very, very good job at bringing to light. You have a very good lobbying committee, and bringing to light legislation that, you know, have an effect on the motorcycle community. You've done a good job with that. Certainly it had a profound effect in the state on how we do our enforcement. And quite, you know, honestly, we were talking about it tonight, it made our life a little easier because people drive like lunatics. And, you know, these are the people that need to be stopped and written, and these are the people we want written and given a ticket before they hurt one of us. So that, again, I can't stress that enough, that that's the goal. Our goal is to make these statistics go away. Will we ever hit that? Certainly that's a far-fetched, you know, pipe dream. But we could try our best, and we can do the enforcement and make sure we're doing things and try to stress upon folks like yourselves to, you know, listen, we all know, we'll go back to the helmets. Everybody's seen that. Maybe it doesn't hurt. Hey, John, hey, Joe, hey, Jane, you should really think twice about, you know, the helmet issue, all right? And again, before I leave, if anybody was curious, I will show you the photo. I thought it was Santa Claus with the cowboy hat, but my brother's convinced it's Jesus. Either way, it looks sort of like you right there. But I will gladly show you if you need. It's an undoctored photo of the helmet gouge, and I am convinced, regardless of Jesus in his cowboy hat or Santa Claus, whatever he's doing, I'm convinced that DOT helmet saved his life. I am absolutely convinced. So, you had one more thing.
Just wanted to make a statement. Do you realize that the one girl you have to end up in a book, there's two questions about motorcycles?
When you take your permit test?
Do you realize that, or that they started that about a year ago?
Yeah, I didn't.
I don't know why they didn't think you knew that.
Yeah, which is good, and driver's ed now incorporates a section for that, and that's actually something we take part in. So.
Tried that a few years ago, we can't get it.
Yeah, so the driver's ed, again with this grant, when we do the presentation, so the grant is twofold. It's things like this for educational purposes and the enforcement. We haven't with COVID last year and even this year, there hasn't been any in-person driver's ed classes, but we have a few classes, driver's education courses that reach out to us, and our officers will actually do a block of instruction as in regards to the motorcycles and what to keep an eye
Thank
on. So, yeah, which we hope, again, it's lesson learned. There you go. It's lessons learned as a young, student that we're hoping at present. And really this sort of plays right into this. When Jim showed me this a few years ago, I was actually really, really impressed with this. I really actually think it's a really good idea. It's a good thing. Did you guys want to add anything else before we get out of here? And then when we leave, you can talk bad about us and we won't even know.
We wouldn't do that.
Nick, thanks for having us. Please
Oh,
extend
thank
our
you.
regards to Chris.
Thank you,
Sorry he
brother.
wasn't here, but please
Yes,
tell him
we will.
thanks for having us.
He said thank you guys for coming, I talked to him a couple minutes ago, he said thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm sure he'll watch this and,
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
did you get my slim side? Or was it- I fell asleep. As soon as I go out, I can let out, I've been sucking in this whole time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.